everyone. Welcome back to the Simply Trade Roundup. My name is Annik. I'll be your host today, as I am always. And if you don't know me, I am in trade unintentionally, but I'm very intentional right now because I love coming in trade and discussing all sorts of topics from AI to importing to tariffs, as we always talk about. So now we're here, and I have two beautiful women with me here today. We're at ICPA conference in San Antonio, Texas. So we have Jennifer from the Volvo Group, and then we have Penny from PAC, whom you've seen before. So Jennifer, this is your first time, right? And it's so awesome to have you here.
Thank you.
And Penny, it's always lovely to have you back. I mean, we work a lot with PACs, and it's always great to have you guys on. So today we're going to discuss AI and how we utilize it in the industry, because AI has been upcoming within the past few years. And we want to touch on that and how it works, what the conversations are like between businesses, and what kind of challenges we have to overcome to truly utilize AI within the space. So Jennifer and Penny, they've had sessions here at ICPA. So if we want to kind of start on what you talked about in your session, because I think that'll lead us to the conversation that we'll have after on where the conversations can go. So Jennifer, if you want to start.
Sure. So in my session, I talked about practical utilization and implementation of AI support for customs clearance on the enterprise level. So basically looking at an individual company and understanding how they could use AI to better support the ever-changing and incredibly volatile landscape that we have recently found ourselves in.
And Penny.
Yeah, so my session, it's really sort of a more beginner session where I think the goal really for me is to help people who haven't really started using general AI tools to get things started, and also talk about the fundamentals behind how AI works. And then also for our organization, trade compliance leaders, how they can have a better taste to pick a right and, quality tool in the AI evolution. So that's really it.
Right. And Jennifer, I want to get to the automotive industry, right? It is very much affected by the tariffs today. We're seeing a lot of challenges, even within the past years, not just tariffs, but there's an overall uncertainty that is covering the industry. What kind of challenges have you been facing within your job and just in general? And, I'm sure you're seeking answers, but where do the challenges start for you?
I think the thing to understand about our industry specifically is in the last year alone, there's been over 1,000 policy changes around the world.
That speaks volume.
It does. It literally does. And it covers $5 trillion worth of spend.
Yeah.
And even if the majority of those measures were what we would say are trade remedy measures or trade facilitation measures, the majority of the spend was not covered by those policy changes. It was covered by the other changes, which are more trade barrier changes.
Right.
And when you think about an industry like the automotive industry, these are very complex supply chains, right? This isn't a simple, I'm making a sweater and I need yarn, and my yarn needs to come from cotton. So I need a sheep farmer somewhere to give me cotton so I can spin it into yarn so I can knit a sweater. That's not my supply chain. So on an individual vehicle, you can have anywhere between 2,000 and 3,000 parts on every single vehicle. And those parts are coming from thousands of suppliers all over the world at any given point in time. Some of them we're producing ourselves in-house, and some of them we're sourcing somewhere else, right? So now with all of the new tariff policies and all of the reporting requirements that have gone into place, not just with Section 232 steel, aluminum, and copper, but also with forced labor, EUDR, and other policies like this that are happening around the world, we have to understand our own supply base much more intimately than we have ever needed to understand it in the past. And collect a tremendous amount of detail all the way down to the raw material origination and processing for every single part and component that we use on our vehicles. It's very complex because not only do some of our suppliers not want to share that information because they consider it to be proprietary to their own business, but in most cases, they don't have it themselves because we're buying finished parts, assemblies, and components. And our tier one suppliers have a multitude of suppliers underneath them buying all kinds of other parts and sub-assemblies. And then you have to keep drilling down, sometimes even 5 or 6 layers deep before you get to your first raw material supplier.
Yeah.
So my tier ones can't answer the question when I say how much steel or aluminum is in this and where did it come from and where was it processed, right? They can't answer those. So we have to meet all of the new trade regulation requirements that are evolving around the world. Everything from connected vehicle regulations to import-export restrictions to dual use restrictions, because we also do commercial vehicles. And what you have to understand is that for us, a truck or a bus or a construction equipment vehicle is a commercially designed product, but any military agency anywhere in the world can buy one of our products and then it becomes dual use.
Yeah.
Which creates another level of complexity, especially when it comes to drawback, which is Penny's area of specialty.
Yeah.
So trying to navigate through all of this, unprepared and unable to ramp up resources fast enough to handle all of it, kind of puts an extra emphasis on using whatever augmentation tools we can find. And AI is one of the currently engaged augmentation tools that has seen let's say, an explosion over the last year in its practice and its utilization. There are some restrictions in how we can use it that differ from country to country. But in general, if we can harness the power of this tool and we can use it to help our own resources, limited that they are, to manage the workload that has just become exponentially more challenging and exponentially larger, it relieves some of the stress from our own employees. So where people are, in some cases, afraid that AI might replace their roles, I think in this specific arena, in trade, especially in automotive, there's very limited risk that it's going to replace you, because in reality, we need it. It's going to get buried under all of the legislative
Right. The attention to detail has just become so much more important, right? Even though it should have always been important. So I think I always say, it did open our eyes a little bit to what we have to pay attention to. And you're not even mentioning the error of humans, right? There's so much human error that can happen. And I think, well, that's what I perspective. I think that's where AI comes in, right? While we need like a kind of an offloading experience for people that, there's just too much workflow that they can do or handle, or they're just going to get behind, and we can't get behind in trade, because if you get behind, the shipment might be flagged and, you will end up paying millions of dollars, and there you are. So you really need to do it right. So I want to touch on Penny's brain a little bit, and Penny's brain is incredible, and I love to pick it. It's just a different side of it. While we're talking about trade, this is the tech part of it, right?
Yeah.
The AI part of it. So listening to Jennifer, what are you feeling about that? How are you fixing this problem? I know you're trying to, and you're doing such a great job, but how are you implementing that?
Yeah, I think this is really a process. It's a co-authoring process where, one side of it, it's maybe a technologist, but more importantly, it's really people like Jennifer who have very deep understanding of their supply chain, of their trade compliance problems. And together, Jennifer has so much good ideas about what are things that can be improved.
Yeah.
And that's really we have to listen and really understand where are the things that, AI can really help. PAX is really, we are a first duty drawback AI powered solution, but, we're going to go beyond duty drawback, and a lot of things that we see as we serve clients duty drawback. There's so many inefficiency beyond duty drawback. Duty drawback, it's a post-event thing where, import export already happens, right. But as you serve them post-event, you kind of also get a sneak peek on what happens pre-event, what are the things people can do better. So I think that's really the thing that excites me the most, which is there's so much opportunity that's untapped, and all the conversation that we gather in conferences as we serve clients, it's all super inspiring for me.
And how do you eliminate the fear factor of trade? I mean, you mentioned it, right? The fear of AI taking over. How do you eliminate that? Yourself?
I guess I wouldn't really, maybe, I don't know if it's a good analogy, but for, a few hundred years ago, farmers used to farm with their hands, right? And now there's like automation around it. So it frees us up to not have to farm by hand. Everyone can do things that are more creatively beyond farming, right? So I think for trade compliance, of course, we're not farming, but a lot of things, if you close your eyes, if it's a task that you can simply delegate to, for example, an intern, it should be something that can, eventually be automated, or semi-automated, right? So, that really is not really replacing anyone. It's really freeing you up to do things that are more high value. Like, if, for example, when you do audits, maybe now you can only do 5%, cover 5% of it.
Right.
But by freeing you up, you can do maybe 99% of it, things like that. So I think it's really, there's still a lot of opportunity. There's more work to be done. And I think that's where AI can really help here.
But starting now, right? I mean, if you want to implement AI or you make the decision, right? Your team says, you know what, we're going to give it a chance. How would that work? What are the first step conversations that are being made, right? If this business comes up to you and just from overall AI perspective, duty drawback is one, and that is very beneficial. We talk on that on the podcast quite a lot. But what would you tell them, or where do you start having this conversation? I know some businesses are wanting to implement AI now, but they just don't know where to start and what to even optimize, right?
Yeah. So I think in my session yesterday, I kind of talk about this AI adoption process where I want to advocate, not all the AI tool is paid. It can start from free. For example, if your company already has Microsoft Copilot, you should start with this general LLM to complete some simple tasks. For example, summaries, for example, data manipulations, things like that. But then as you move on to more complicated tasks, there are specialized AI tools that you want to start maybe potentially pay for, or like specialized AI powered service provider, for example, duty drawback. We are an AI service provider. We act like regular duty drawback broker where we're licensed. We help you things from start to end, from all raw data all the way to claim submission. But behind the scenes powered by AI. But that's really for the model where the things are more complicated. It's not everything is that complicated. For the general AI tool, you can already complete a lot of tasks. And as you move up to the chain, as you start paying more, you want to be aware of the ROI analysis. You want to look at what's the cost, what's the benefit, am I saving time, how much am I paying, like things like that. That's super important in the decision framework.
For such a large business, I know Volvo, right? I mean, you guys are global. What kind of questions do you have for it in that sense?
So we really have to start with understanding what we need and being able to communicate that to a company like Pax AI, right? If I don't understand what my own need is, I really can't ask her how to help me.
Right.
So understanding where your pain points are as a global player. Is it the diversity of the rules from one country to the other one? Is it the complexity of the rules in a single country? Is there one specific activity type that's eating 90% of your time?
Yeah.
What is it that you need help with the most? You define that, and then you define a data strategy. So you basically say, this is where I need help. This is what I want to automate or facilitate. And this is the data that I want to be able to both put into it and the data that I want to be able to get out of it. So just a simple flow. And I used this example in my session. If you want to take all of the documentation that's required to fill out a single entry, a 7501 for the US, okay? So an entry summary form. You're going to have a purchase order. You're going to have an invoice. You're going to have a bill of lading.
Yeah.
You're going to have a shipping manifestation.
Right.
And the information on all of those forms has to match before you can create your 7501. But all of those forms might have come from different suppliers in different formats, using different data elements in different structured ways. So it takes us time as a human being to look at 4 different forms and to pick out the information we need and to manually transfer that.
Yeah.
Whereas if I can get AI to read all of those forms, even though they're in a different format, and if I can teach AI which fields to collect and to put in my 7501, I didn't spend an hour doing it now. AI spent 15.
How that's not going to replace some of the people. I mean, we did discuss, AI can eliminate some in the future. Coming AI is just going to advance. It's just going to become stronger. But I think we as people have to adapt, and there has to be certain conversations being made before you implement AI, right? You're not going to implement it from the top and say, it's done, you guys are done. No, that's just not going to happen. But how do you prep people, and how do you, let them adapt? Because it's just adaptation and it's learning new tools, right? I mean, I always say it's 2026, guys. We have to get with the times. It's like phones. Everyone has a phone. Some people, there's no, I don't know one person that doesn't have a phone, and those weren't a thing when they were young. So people clearly adapt in their life, and so we have to adapt in jobs as well. But how do you address that to them, or how can they adapt to AI? And maybe Penny wants to speak on that too.
Yeah. I honestly think it's will be driven by really curiosity. The LLM, like as you see all these general LLM, it's really a chatbot, right? So if you don't know how to use AI, you should just ask AI how to use AI. Like it's readily available. And if you ask the right question, you have the curiosity to really understand how the tool can help you. You can really do without any consultation, really be pretty independent on, getting a lot of answer already. So I think, I I feel like the adaptation, of course, it's an education process, but it's really like a bi-directional education process where Jennifer teach me about what she sees, and I also share what I see in my world with her, and that's really it.
Right.
And I think the key from an enterprise perspective is to engage the participants and the key stakeholders as early in the process as possible. Because if they feel like they have a voice in the development and they have a voice in how the tool is going to be used, then it becomes easier for them to adopt it themselves. And then I think the second thing is to set very realistic expectations, right? Because in reality, even if I implemented every single bit of automation I could get my hands on today, I can probably only automate maybe 30% of the entire workload that we have to carry.
Yeah.
And with the legislation changing as quickly as it's changing, and it's going to continue changing going forward, we need to focus our attention on managing those changes and on forecasting and preparing our compliance programs to meet those, because the compliance demands are happening day by day now. We don't have months or years to amp up for that. So I don't need you spending your time filling out a 7501 form. I need you to look at the next thing that's coming down the pipeline and to tell me, what do I need to change in our systems, in our processes? What information and instructions do we need to give to our brokers so that we're ready when the next requirement hits? Right? So it's not taking your job away. It's shifting your focus away from these more administrative requirements and into things that have a higher strategic value.
There's so many components. And you know what? I recently had a conversation, and it was on software, but I think it applies here too. It is, if you are not starting now to move with AI, you're going to be left behind. And I know it's scary, and I'm not saying you need to jump into the water and drown. I'm saying you're going to dip your feet into the water and see how it works for you and how it can really help you. It might be a nice feeling, but if you don't, you're going to be left behind, which is also probably will look at your profits, because other companies will utilize it. They'll be faster, stronger. And I think that will reflect your salary at the end. If you're not, you're spending, and we haven't even talked about, you will invest into an AI. It's not just something that is cheap for your business. And I'm sure on a larger scale, it can be even more expensive, which I think is scary for CEOs or upper management, because you don't want to lose money. It seems like everything's about money, but I think we need to look long term. Right.
I would agree.
Right.
Yes. And it's all about building the business case to support what you're doing and to take things step by step. You don't need an elephant in one setting, right?
Exactly.
You have a plan of integration, and you take it, you pick the low hanging fruit first, you bring it in, you test it, you use it, you test it, you use it.
Yeah.
And then you move on to the next thing.
And I think Penny would agree. You talk to a lot of people, you share your demos, right? You see what works. And that's another thing. How do you know which AI is right for you? I know there's so many out there, which is great. It's fantastic. So many great options, that we see here also at the conference, because they want to showcase what they can do. But how do you find the right one? Because, duty drawback doesn't work for everyone. It works for most. So you need to educate yourself, guys. And I have an episode on this. Please do, because I'm not telling you not to use duty drawback. You definitely need to check that you're qualified for it and everything, because you want your money back, we all do. So it's like doing your taxes almost. You have to do it. But how do you know it's right for you?
Yeah. So I guess talking about maybe behind the scene, we talked about multi-model system yesterday in my talk. For different use cases, you want to use the right model. I think trade compliance is very interesting because it's not just text, not just human language, but also there's a lot of data. Right? Yeah. So how do you manipulate data, taxes, the text and regulations in a sort of high guardrail, high compliant way. I think that's a very interesting topic that we constantly are solving at PAX. In terms of like the different AI tools, I think for trade compliance leader, you really, as Jennifer said, you want to really understand where do you spend the most time on, and how do you want to automate that, right? If you, let's say you only classify 1 goods a month, like why would you buy a classification tool, for example? Right. So like, it's really this ROI analysis on how you can supercharge your team in the most efficient way. That's really how you would guide you, like, to look at what type of tool you want to adapt.
And I think that's why we urge everyone also in the industry to attend conferences. I mean,
Right.
You're at the ICPA conference, right? This conversation started between you guys. You know, you're furthering, and you can bring this back to your team, and you can bring whatever Jennifer addressed to you back to your team and say, hey, maybe we should look at this area because this is the conversation we've had. And I hope that, you know, our listeners, whether you're here at the conference or you are attending different conferences, there's so many great. So I want to thank you guys for being here, having the conversation with me. It's an all-women's and it's International Women's Day this week when this podcast comes out. So I want to thank you guys, and happy International Women's Day to all the women in trade that are doing such amazing things and being in the leadership. I think we're all growing. So thank you, and I hope you have a great one. I'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.